If you go to KFGO.com, which is the home base here of the News and Views Radio Network, you're going to find an article in there. You're going to find a weekly column in there that I was so happy when we had the opportunity to get this, to have it be part of what we do here on the News and Views Radio Network and on KFGO. The column is called Jim Shaw on the Record. Now, Jim Shaw is a name that most of you know from his investigative journalism on television for years and his work in producing news as well, both at KVRR and I know he worked in a lot of different capacities, did some television for DAY. That being said, Jim writes amazing columns, just amazing columns, and he wrote one that I need to bring to your attention because I read this and I was like, Jim, we got to visit about this on air. I mean, this is serious stuff. And he said, yeah, I can do that. So, Jim, good to have you back on News and Views.
Always glad to be here. Thanks for asking, Joel.
You bet. The premise of this article is what's going on and what happened at the Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School District. If you would, just give people a little recap of what you found through your investigation.
Boy, there's a lot I found. It started with one phone call to me about would I be interested in writing about this with just a little bit of information, and then the more people I talked to, and then the more people I talked to, and the more who led me to others and others and others, and it got to be so much that I couldn't do it in one column. So what I had come out yesterday, that's just the first part. I'm going to have a whole lot more coming out Thursday of next week. But what I had that came out yesterday is I interviewed 3 former educators from Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton, 2 of them former teachers, 1 of them a former principal, and they all talked about what a horrible climate it is to work there. It's so demeaning and insulting to women. They're not asked for their opinions. They're treated horribly. And then they gave all sorts of horror stories and individual situations. So if you want, I can just give you a few of them. There was one teacher I talked to, and she had a transgender student who was being harassed by students and the staff. The teacher complained about it as the student is basically saying she may commit suicide, and the school didn't care. And they said they don't want to hear it. Mind your own business. That same teacher was called a horrible name by a student. The first, actually 2 words. The first begins with an F. The second begins with a C. And she told the principal about that, assuming that student would be disciplined. The student was not disciplined, and the principal said, "That's your effing problem. You deal with it." Then in that classroom itself, there were all sorts of issues going on that the school did not repair, or certainly did not repair in a timely manner. This was going on for months. They had mice coming in every day from the ceilings and the walls, dozens of them. The classroom was 90 degrees for the entire school year. Didn't fix that. Another teacher talked about the harassment she received from all sorts of students, but the one notable situation was she had a student in class, pulls her aside, and shows her a photo of himself holding assault weapons. And he's hinting that he might use them in the school or at the school prom. And there were no consequences for that student at that time. And then later he comes back and shows her the ammunition. And can you imagine if that student actually took those weapons and fired up the school, and the school district knew about this might happen and didn't do anything? And then finally, I interviewed a principal, former principal. So she was constantly meeting with the administrators, that's the superintendent and the other principals, and she said it was the most sexist environment she'd ever been a part of, and there were all sorts of sexual innuendos. And at the meetings, they would talk about boobs and bra sizes and butts. And she was so uncomfortable, and it was so disgusting. And this principal, she was making very good money. She was making $139,000 a year, but she hated it so much, she hated that environment, that she quit her job without having another job lined up, even though she was making a tremendous salary.
Yeah. In your article, you point out she didn't have a job. She just said, that's it. I can't take it anymore. And she left. Some of the things that in your article, you point out that the language that was used and, the atmosphere, I was sitting here thinking, we all talk about, these massive shootings in schools. And oftentimes the argument reverts to the individual that holds the gun. We can talk about the caliber, we can talk about the weapon, we can talk about the ammunition, we can talk about a lot of things. But in the end, the one thing a lot of us agree on is if we could get to that person sooner, if we could get to that individual and know what their intentions were, then we can save lives. For that to happen and that student to not be dealt with, Jim, I mean, the other stuff, damning, just terrible. I understand that. We'll get to some of that. But for me, as a parent, when somebody's showing their hand and threatening with an assault weapon, threatening with ammunition, that's almost, all of it's unforgivable. But this one is like, my God, have we learned nothing, Jim?
Well, that's what it sounded like in this case, and fortunately for this teacher, the second time around she had a different strategy, because the first time around there was no discipline, nothing happened to that student. The second time when he showed a photo with the ammunition, then she went to the school resource officer, and that school resource officer took it seriously, whereas her principal apparently did not. But, oh, my God, if ever that was a warning sign, if ever there was a time to react, it was when he first showed her that photo. And they should have just made this a top priority. It's just stunning that they kind of dismissed it and didn't do anything with it. And thank God nothing happened. But as we know, it happens in other schools. It happens a lot. It could have happened here. As a matter of fact, and I can't say this with 100% degree of certainty, but I was told that this student did get involved later with a real-life shooting situation. He did shoot somebody.
I'm going to go to the text club, our Adventure RV text club, and get a couple of these to Jim. One says, does Shaw have 100% evidence, or is it coming from former employees? Some of these allegations are serious, so he better be 110% accurate on this. Jim?
Well, the first story, which was with Lisa Prindle Frank, I have visual evidence. You can see a student holding a jar with mice in it. You can also see she took a photo of the thermostat, and it said 90 degrees. And the other stuff, these were teachers' stories, which I'm sure could be documented because the student resource officer would have to have a record of that teacher going to her about the student with the ammunition. And the other one, there's a record that principal resigned, and she's saying what she said. But I want to make clear that I called the school superintendent's office before any of this was published, and I gave them a chance to refute some of these allegations. And they declined to comment, which is their prerogative. They didn't have to. But in my mind, as someone who's been in the journalism biz in this area for 47 years, I wouldn't have written it. I wouldn't have had it published if I wasn't convinced that these things were true.
Well,
I was just sorry to interrupt. When you talk to teacher or parent or student time and time again here, and they all have their own horror stories, they can't all be making them up. There's a pattern here. If it was just one or two, I wouldn't have written it. I would have been convinced. But with so many of them saying similar type things, that was pretty overwhelmingly convincing to me.
Okay, here's the other part. I want to extend an invitation as well to any administration member of the Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School District. They are more than welcome to come on this show, this region-wide radio show, and speak to some of what was written here. And that same invitation goes to any school board member at Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton. We're talking about Jim Shaw's article at KFGO.com. It's titled Jim Shaw on the Record. We're talking about Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton and his investigation into that. Jim, a text message comes in and says, have these complaints been brought forward to the school board if administration leaders are failing at addressing? Or were they just brought forward to one of the top parentheses now, investigators at KFGO Radio? Surprised Shaw had time to play Sherlock Holmes on this since he spends so much time crying about Republicans. Jim.
Well, my history is of being a journalist and being an investigative journalist, and that's who I am. And that's what this was about. This took months and months and months to work on. And I made sure before it was ready to be published, I had every I dotted and every T crossed. So I'm very confident in the accuracy of the work. And as you may have noticed in this column and the one next week, I really don't have any commentary. I wrote these as straight news stories, which again is my roots. This again is really who I am. And I let the comments from the teachers and the former principal speak for themselves. Or in the one case also, I had a former student who talked about how she was picking up the mice every day. There was no reason for me to interject anything. I think either people are going to be horrified with what they read or shocked, or they're not. I didn't need to throw more fuel on the fire. So in this one, I took at it entirely different. And as for the other comment about going after Republicans, well, I'm very concerned about what's happening in the White House and those who enable the person in the White House, and those are legitimate topics to be written about. But that has nothing to do with this. That's a separate animal. But first and foremost, I've always been a journalist, and I'm always about facts. And I expected when I wrote this, and I expected again next week, that they'll go after the messenger, and the messenger is me. But these stories stand for themselves, and I want to give these teachers and the principal credit because they put their names to it. This is not going to be easy for them either. They put themselves out there and telling their stories, and I'm sure people will try to discredit them, but they wouldn't have put their names to it if these experiences didn't happen, and they wouldn't have put their names to it if there aren't real problems in the Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School District that need to be addressed.
Jim, you mentioned in the article that one of the administrators that wasn't there for these individuals it no longer works in the Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School District. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that was in the first case with the first teacher I commented when she was reporting the incidents, such as the name calling directed towards her and the transgender stuff. But for other incidents here, the principal is still there, and for what you'll read next week, the principal is still there. The one who they dealt with is still the same principal. So for the most part, people are still in place who dealt with these situations.
The article is called Jim Shaw on the Record. If you go to KFGO.com, the home base here of the News and Views Radio Network, you'll see he wrote about Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton and what happened to some teachers there. It appears that one was fired. I think two others quit. Is that safe to say, Jim?
That is safe to say, yes.
Okay, and the principal in question for some of this is now gone. That principal, is he still in education somewhere, Jim, or did you investigate that?
He went to another school district.
Have you spoke to him at that school district and give him a chance to respond?
I have not. I went with the superintendent. The buck stops with him, and again, and he was very gracious. And he said that he's working a lot on the referendum they have coming up, but the superintendent is the spokesperson for the district, and the superintendent should have known all of that. So I have not, and I did not try the current principal at the high school because, again, that would have had to go through the superintendent. But again, most of the stuff dealing with the high school involves the current principal, and you'll read and hear more about that next week. With some other similar but different situations that I'm reporting next week.
Okay. The text message comes in and says, how come we're not naming the school and the principal in this situation? Well, we are naming the school. It's Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton. They're saying, and the principal in this situation, and our teachers not mandatory reporters. Jim, your response to that?
Well, they did report all this stuff. That was their frustration, is that it didn't go anywhere. The first teacher talked about what was going on, and they told her that was her problem. The second teacher, this is the one who with the student who showed off his assault weapons, she told the principal. So that was their frustration, is that things would be going on and the school didn't act on that. And again, you will see next week, one of the constant themes is lack of discipline against misbehaving students, lack of consequences for misbehaving students. It's a pattern over and over again. And as one of the teachers said to me, it's like they reward the bully and they ignore the teacher. So that's kind of that. They tell me that's the climate in that school district.
Somebody texted in and said there are no politics in that article.
There aren't.
Jim, I think that they're backing you on what your point is there.
There aren't. There are some columns I will write about politics. There are some I will not. I don't want to write. Believe me, I have no desire to write about Donald Trump every week or every other week. I write whatever's the hot topic. And this one became a priority. But again, this took me months and months to put together until I finally felt I had it. And I feel very, very confident in what I wrote. And I know it's hard for people to accept. And I know there's a tendency, again, to blame the messenger or to try to poke holes in this. But the superintendent was given an opportunity, and that opportunity still exists, to comment about this, or anybody else at the school district can comment on this. I don't think this issue is going to go away. Ever since I wrote what came out yesterday, my phone is blown up. Even since we've been on the air, I am hearing from other former teachers. I am hearing from parents who had situations. So next week's column, which was already going to be long, is now going to be even longer because I want to finish it up next week. But there's a whole lot of stories out there, and they can't all be making them up. There's something there, and people were afraid to speak out, I might add, and because a lot of them thought, well, I'm the only one, and I'm just one person against a very powerful school district and a powerful administration and a school board that they feel doesn't either listen or doesn't care. But there's strength in numbers, and one speaks up after another. That seems to have opened the floodgates.
Well, here's what opens the floodgates for me. I mean, you're reporting in the article about a young person struggling at life, a transgender student who spoke to her teacher and wanted to commit and was thinking about committing suicide, and it was ignored. And then you're speaking about a young man who is threatening a teacher by showing her weapons, ammunition, all of that at a time when we all know what's happening in our schools. And so it really can't get more serious than that, Jim. Have you been contacted at all by the attorney representing Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton?
No, I have not been contacted by anybody.
What about the parents of the what I would call the students? Let's put it that way. What about the parents of the students? Have you been contacted by them?
Funny you should mention. And next week's column will have at least 2 sets of parents talking about things that happen to their kids. But yes, I was contacted yesterday after this was published by the mother of the transgender student who was being harassed at the high school and talked about committing suicide. And she had some very interesting things to say. We might be talking more. She wants to talk to me more. So yes, I've heard from them, and I've heard from others, and so I have a lot of more phone calls and text messages and emails to sort through.
Well, the one thing that jumps out and just stares at a person in this article is that the teachers gave their names.
They did, and I told, believe me, they did not want to. They did not want to, and I told them it was crucial that they did. Next week, I'm going to have a couple of anonymous people, but people who are familiar with that school district will know who I'm talking about. But I said, yeah, the story is so much more credible when I've got a name attached to it. I got to have the name. And one teacher sent me a photo to give it more credibility. Next week, I'll have another teacher with a photo. I can't give them enough credit because this is going to be hard on them. But they wanted the story told. They felt the story needed to be told, and I felt that the story deserved to be told.
I'm just going to say this, and this isn't a counter or an argument to Jim. I appreciate Jim bringing this forward because you can't get better until you find out what's wrong. So I understand that. My experience with the Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School District had been nothing but positive because, of course, I officiated, but I didn't get to see the inner bowels of the school. I didn't get to see teachers that were willing to put their name on the line and put their careers and their reputations out there for the public to say, are you lying or are you not lying? You know, when you give your name to it, you open yourself up. And so if the superintendent is worried about a bond issue, I would suggest, yes, that's vitally important, but making sure people feel their kids are safe, it's hygienic, and they're in a learning environment is more important, I would think, than anything. And so my point is this, Jim, in saying all that. If the superintendent wanted to see the article now, because he's going to get pressure after this interview, if he wanted to see that next article and comment on it or be in it, would you be open to that? Yes.
He has my number. He has my name. What I would do, my thought is if he wanted to comment is let him see then what's coming up next thing, and then he can then comment on anything he wants, and I would publish it. I have an obligation to publish that if he's going to respond. That would be irresponsible of me if he had something to say about what I had written and I did not publish it. So he absolutely has that open invitation to do that, and I think the public would be interested in it because I have a feeling the story is going to grow some more, and whether he talks to me directly, which again he has no obligation to do, but whether he talks to me directly or at a school board meeting or does internal discussion, the school board and the superintendent are going to have to deal with this because it's out there in the public. People are talking about it, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out there, and if you ignore it, then that's not a good look either.
Well, and as the individual that's in charge of KFGO, I can tell you this. I'm the one that recruited Jim to write for KFGO when I saw the opportunity to have him do that. Jim came to me ahead of time with this article, and I said, that isn't our situation, Jim. You wouldn't be writing at KFGO if I didn't trust you to, number one, put things out there that are factual. Number two, be afraid to actually speak about what you find out. And he's not afraid to speak about what he's found out. So those individuals who are out there using words like lawsuit already, I'm going to say this one more time. If the superintendent wants to come on this show, if any school board member wants to come on this show, they are more than welcome to do so. We will address it. But this was going to find its way into the light of day. And so just understand that. Jim, the Minnesota Department of Education, is there any communication with them? Did the teachers talk to them? What is their involvement, if any, on this?
As far as I know, there's no involvement. The teachers, I found, were frightened. They were frightened to tell anybody. And you look at that principal who quit. She was frightened to talk about it. You feel like you're the only one and you're up against the world. I'm not saying they shouldn't have, but it's very difficult, whether you be a teacher going against your entire school district or somebody else in a big company, and you're one person going against them. It's tough. The odds are stacked against you. The situation makes you be the bad person for reporting it. But maybe now it'll change. I don't know. But so many of these people just kept their stories inside of them. And finally, what happened was, and you'll read a couple of these situations next week, there were some incidents that happened in the last school year that was the breaking point for a couple of teachers. The first two teachers I talked to, you'll read about next week, and they'd had it, and they said it's time for people to find out about it, and it just so happened that I know somebody who those teachers had talked to, and that person talked to me, and that person put me in touch with those teachers, and even then I was like, wow. I wasn't really sure if I was going to do anything with it, but I needed to talk to more people, and then I was convinced I had to do it. And again, for those who are writing in and disparaging me, I get it, but I've been doing journalism in this town for 47 years. I'm proud of my record. I've never had to go back and retract a story. My stories are thoroughly researched. They are based on one thing only, and that is accuracy. And again, I wouldn't write it if I didn't feel these stories hold up. I had
Jim,
no knowledge of the district. I just followed wherever the story took me.
Another article coming next week. This week, Jim Shaw on the record addressing a situation in Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School. Jim Shaw is with us. I want to read one of these text messages. It says, I'll close with this. I wonder why people don't want to do civic duties, run for school board, city council, etc., because news, in parentheses, shows like this don't apply common sense. Employees sometimes agree with employers. Students sometimes pick on each other. People, in parentheses, go on record as anonymously. Sure, there might be an issue here, but does it deserve to be publicly aired, or should it be addressed through other means? Give that big picture some thought. My point being, but you got your clicks. Congrats. Jim, you want to address that?
Sure. The school district is the government. This is public. Your kids are going there. Your tax dollars are going there. So people need to know what's going on in their government, whether it be the school district or the governor's office or the legislature or the education department. But this is very, very important. And what my motivation is here is informing the public. Just let them know what's going on and see how it carries out. But for me to have come across this information and then not have explored it and written about it would have been irresponsible. This is what you hired me to do, is to alert the public about what's happening in our community. And what I found was very egregious and disturbing. And hopefully in the long run, this will lead to some positive change. I have a feeling that in the long run, conditions will be better in the Dilworth-Glyndon-Felton School District.
Text message comes in and says, I'm a parent from a DGF that just pulled their kids from the district. I have a lot of information. Please reach out to me. That phone number will be given to Jim. It says the amount of people coming forward in the last 24 hours is incredible. Thank you, Jim, for covering this. I have a feeling you just scratched the surface. So, again, more coming next week, Jim. I'd like to tell you I look forward to talking to you about it then, but I'm not sure that I do. I'm not going to lie to you.
Your call, Joel. It's going to be published with or without another interview about this. So
yeah,
I'm fine either way.
It's just when you read about kids like this and you hear this, it's so uncomfortable to talk about. And yet, if you don't talk about it, how are you going to fix it? And so I want to end this one more time, ladies and gentlemen. The school board, the superintendent, all of them are welcome on this show to express their views. That's why it's called News and Views. And if they want to respond to this, if they feel that they've been misrepresented, it's available to them. It's available to them right here. Jim, all I can tell you is this. It takes guts to do what you're doing. And I know you for the homework that you consistently do. And I appreciate you coming on News and Views, and I appreciate you writing it, Jim. Thank you.
Well, glad to do it. Thank you for having me. Getting heat, that goes with the territory, but this is in my blood. This is what I do.